Welcome to Saturdays at 7, Christian Scholars Review's conversation series with thought leaders about the academic vocation and the relationship that vocation shares with the church. My name is Todd Ream. I have the privilege of serving as the publisher for Christian Scholars Review and as the host for Saturdays at 7. I also have the privilege of serving on the faculty and the administration at Indiana Wesleyan University. Our guest is Kimo Ah Yun, president of Marquette University. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad to be here. Look forward to having a great conversation.
In some ways, serving as a college or university president is comparable to serving as the mayor of a small to mid-sized city. Many institutions offer living learning communities, wellness centers, dining facilities, laboratories, libraries, studios. Some institutions even offer their own post offices, police departments, and fire departments. And when combined, their numbers of students and employees can range from approximately 100 on one end of the spectrum from a school like Deep Springs College to over 150,000 at an institution such as Arizona State. Of course, those numbers don't tell the full story, as college and universities also have a considerable number of external and internal constituents that presidents communicate with. As a communication scholar and a president of a university community of approximately 14,000, what means can you determine to be most effective when communicating with your internal constituents, the staff, your faculty, your students?
Yeah, internally, because I'm on campus and these are people who have access to me, it's usually face-to-face town hall meetings and Senate meetings. And so they really appreciate that time to get together. I do monthly lunches for faculty, staff, and students, and dinners where people can sign up. And then throughout the year, we break bread. I answer whatever questions that they want, and we have a good conversation. And in addition to that, when I go to faculty Senate meetings or I do other sorts of university-wide meetings, they really want me to be in front of them. So I think that's the preferred. There are others that ways that I think can achieve the same thing. So we do some video. I do a monthly newsletter, regular newsletter that goes out to campus. Occasionally, when certain things happen, I might send out an email. So it's a variety of sources. And I would say is depending on the situation, depending on the information, is going to depend what's the best way to communicate that to the campus.
When presidents seek to communicate with the internal constituents they serve, what do you think those constituents expect to encounter? What are their hopes or expectations, regardless of the medium that might be used?
Yeah, most of the time internally, people want to be seen, they want to be heard, that they want to understand that they're valued. And so in those communication, I think they want recognition of the part that they play in the university and that you understand that. So what I try to do is, I say first and foremost, our mission calls us to serve God. And we do that through the transformation of our students and engaging in research that makes the world better. And so as we're beginning to say that, people want to know, well, can you see that I play a role in that? And they want to make sure that I see that and recognize that.
In what ways then do external constituents maybe have different hopes or different expectations from those who are there on campus?
Yeah, in terms of communication, I think it's clear that they understand that I'm not going to be able to get out and talk to all of them because I'm not in the same place. We track when we're communicating externally. It depends on what age you are and what medium you are familiar with or comfortable with. For some of our alums, they like our magazine or our newsletter, something that's written and that they hold, they can touch. For some of our younger alums or external audiences, they like social media, TikTok, Instagram, something where it's a quick hit that I can make some sort of message and they can see it. Some people who want to dive in more like the kind of deeper video dives. I think that people like a triangulation of ways to be able to get material, but based on people's personal interests, usually they gravitate to one medium a little more.
Now, since you mentioned it, if I may ask a follow-up question here, TikTok. Do you have a TikTok account, or perhaps does the university have one that you have availed yourself of? And do you have a preferred message or two maybe that you share?
Yeah, so TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, have all of them. We try to Facebook, right? We try to push things across multiple platforms. I would say those are good for messages. So around Easter, I was able to give an Easter message. When we were coming back from campus, a welcome back campus message, and then there's some playful things that we do on those as well. And so one of the things we did this year was about kind of like Gen Z TikTok language, me using phrases that they use. I think they find it fairly humorous that a guy who is 59 years old and is using phrases like "you ate that and left no crumbs," or giving 5 big booms as kind of like 5 stars. And I walk around campus and students will yell, "Give me a boom!" And so I give them a big boom, and they like that. So there's kind of some fun stuff that we do.
You got to expand your presidential vocabulary too, and connect with your constituents there.
Yeah, the funny thing is, like, you never know which of those things are going to take off. So I was in a class where I had told the faculty member if within the first, and she had a class of 150 some odd students, and she was trying to get all 150 to come to her office hours in the first 2 weeks of classes. So that's 150 students who have to do one-on-one with the faculty. And I said, all right, if you do that, I'm going to come and bring free crumble cookies to your class. And she was able to do that. And so I had to pay up that agreement, and I brought crumble cookies to 150 odd students. And then she did it again the next semester. And so I was able to do it, bring cookies and get a chance just to be with the students. And given that this other Instagram video that we did where I did give the 5 big booms, some students said, "Hey, will you give us 5 big booms?" And I said, "I'll give you 4 big booms, but we all have to give the 5th boom together." So if you're familiar with this trend, I gave boom, 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 and then all of the students did the 5th boom with me. Well, one of the students had pulled out their phone and took a video of it and then uploaded it on their personal account. And then it got picked up by another account, and it had received over 1 million views of me booming the class. And then I heard from people across the country who were not connected, through my video, that they found it got sent to their feed. So even my daughter, who lives out in California, received it from a different college site feed. And her friends at college were like, "Is this your dad?" So, fun stuff. And I think that's the way, especially the younger students and alums like to consume information.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you. When you survey the history of higher education as it's existed here in the U.S., are there any presidents whose abilities to communicate with the constituents they serve more admirable, perhaps, than others?
I mean, I think part of that is, I think people who are being open to what they're doing. And I think these are individuals who I think have to think about these new forms of social media and others to be able to access it. So, I balance that with also as the message. And so Tim Snyder, who is the outgoing president at Loyola Marymount, I find him to be a highly ethical individual. I find him to be a very smart person. I find his communication to be direct and pointed. And so he is somebody that I really admire and his ability to do that. Another person who I think it's because of her authenticity is Julie Sullivan at Santa Clara University. Of what I've seen of what she's done, but it's because of who she is as a person, right? She brings her full self, and she's real, and she understands what they're trying to accomplish at Santa Clara. And I think that makes her kind of an exceptional communicator in that way.
Yeah. Thank you. I want to ask you some biographical details now, if I may. You're Hawaiian by family heritage. You're born in Compton, California, the 4th child in a family of 5. As a first-generation college student, you earned a bachelor's in communication from Cal State Sacramento, a master's in speech communication from Kansas State University, and then a doctorate in communication from Michigan State. On at least one occasion, you noted that having three older sisters and one younger sister helped you shape your strong communication skills. At what point did you discern that the exercise of communication would prove critical to your vocation in terms of study, but also in terms of practice?
I'm sort of first generation college student. None of my sisters, I have four sisters. None of them ended up graduating from college. I remember distinctly when I was in high school, I began looking around and seeing friends who had, parents who were successful in whatever area of vocation that they had. And there are two things that I noticed. One is they were all college educated and many of them had advanced college degrees. And the second thing is they had really good communication skills because I happened to talk to them and I was, and so I began to put the pieces together and say, well, I can see a pattern here, right? All of the people I know who seem to be really successful and leading productive and happy lives, and are be able to take care of their needs have these things. And I think that's what's helped me to kind of work my way through that. As a first generation college student, you don't know what the road is. And so you don't know that where you're going or how to get there. And so some of it, I stumbled across it. But it was also just picking up really good mentors along the way who could help me to figure out how to navigate the process. What I would say is, most of them are accidental. Where I ended up on each of the different stops were, outside of Sacramento State, which was in my backyard. So that's why I went there. After that, it was kind of accidental and happenstance how I ended up at those different spots.
Can you say a little bit more about those mentors and perhaps what their unique contributions might have been?
Yeah. So, I had a mentor, Nick Burnett, who was one of my faculty members at Sacramento State. Super smart guy, very funny, outgoing, organized, great teacher. And he was a mentor when I was thinking about going on to graduate school. He just took me out and sat me down and said, all right, here's what you need to do to get to those other places. But even before then, he was pouring into me when I was, doing things that probably was not going to keep me on the right path. It's like, can't do those things, right? Stay on the right path. But he was a person who just really helped me to understand my focus. I think about in my master's program, a professor, Bill Shank Hamlin, who really taught me about what excellence is, taught me about, being the best at what you could be. He was a really good researcher. And again, this is the first time where someone devoted to develop me as a leader in a space of engaging in research, which you need to do as a faculty member. Think about my PhD program, my advisor, Sandy Smith, who is a leader in the field of communication, but really taught me how to begin to navigate spaces and use your voice and your ability to get access into those spaces to do better. And then lastly, when I was a professor, Ed Inch, who was my boss, the dean of the College of Arts and Letters at Sacramento State, who, really taught me how to communicate in a complex university about navigating, spaces of faculty and parents and upper administration and students and external partners, understanding you need all of those groups to be successful. So not one person, but many people who did just a small thing that I was able to cobble together and create and become that person that I needed to be.
Yeah. Thank you. You mentioned going back to your alma mater. I echoed that in terms of Sacramento State, and you were served there for almost 20 years. In addition to serving as an award-winning scholar and teacher, that tenure included service as a department chair, a director of a center for teaching and learning, and associate dean for the College of Arts and Letters. Would you describe the discernment process that led you to begin accepting administrative appointments alongside your service as a faculty member?
Yeah, one of the things I always tell my students is don't get focused on the destination, like where you want to end up. Be focused on where you are in the moment. And so I was fortunate enough along the way of whatever I was doing, I just wanted to be the best at that position. So when I was a faculty member, I wanted to be the best faculty member. When I became the director of the Center for Teaching and Learning, I wanted to be the best director of the Center for Teaching and Learning. And not focused on, well, this is going to lead to this, which will lead to that, which will lead to something else. But it was, I just wanted to be as good as I can be the best version of myself in that particular job. And I think that discernment, it opened up doors because when you say yes to trying new things, and when you say yes to trying to be a leader, then people pay attention to that. And they would say, here's someone who wants to lead, who is not leading it because they expect it, but I need someone I can rely on. And that opened up more doors. So I think the discernment process became of just doing well at what I was doing. And then as new opportunities came up, I asked the question, is there something I can do to make something else better right in the next step? And if I could, then I would say, well, here's what I will offer. This is what I would do if you give me an opportunity. And that just kept leading to additional doors being open, eventually to being president of Marquette University, which has been just a spectacular position.
Thank you. As you progressed in your career, that portion of your career where you were at Cal State Sacramento, from what experiences did you derive the greatest sort of satisfaction?
Yeah, probably in developing others. And I think it's again, when you begin to back up all of us, right? What we value is likely something that we saw something that was valuable to us. As a first generation college student, not having any education at all, and then understanding the power of a college education to be able to change the trajectory of your life, that transformative experiences for me is I understood I became who I became because of what others did for me. And I said, well, what can I do to do the same thing? And as I got into other positions, you were able to see that you can increase the magnitude of that impact on others. So yeah, I think about when I was department chair, I was able to change the curriculum that was going to ensure that every student who graduated would have a different experience, and that experience would be current and allow them to be able to go out and find a job and be successful. So I think you find as you can use it as kind of a bullhorn, right, to expand it greater than you could. And so while I had great opportunities in the classroom, you can only impact the students who happen to be in your class that semester. Other positions allowed me to find others to magnify the impact.
Thank you. In 2016, you were appointed Dean of the College of Communication at Marquette. Would you describe the discernment process that led you to not only accept an appointment as a dean, but also a dean at Marquette, half a country from Cal State Sacramento?
Yeah. At the time, I was actually serving as a chair of the board of our church on the leadership team. And my wife had served in that position right before me. And, being part of that leadership team and getting more connected with the internal workings of the church gave me a better appreciation for all you do, or all churches do, to be able to serve other people. And I would be part of this group and where we were really like entrenched in the Word of God and thinking about how we are forming ourselves. And I was part of a men's group where we talked about, iron sharpening iron, and how do we make other people better. And then I would leave this space that I felt good and felt like I would make a difference. And then I would go to my public state institution where you're asked to park your faith at the door or in your car, and then you go in, and then when you pick it back up when you get back in your car. And I wasn't looking to leave Cal State Sacramento. In fact, I thought I would make a career there. But when I had the opportunity to consider a change to Marquette University, and I talked to my wife, and we talked about how great it would be for us to be at a place where our faith was intertwined with what we did at work, and that there wasn't an expectation you would not bring it with you. And It was yeah, I mean, we had a child going to ninth grade, another child going to eighth grade, and our third child going into fourth grade. That's not a time most families pick up and move from California to Wisconsin. And in fact, my children say people never pack up and move from California to Wisconsin. They go the opposite direction. Um, but it was an easy decision knowing that I could be part of the university whose mission included finding ways to grow one's faith and create men and women for and with others to be able to serve. That was a phenomenal, and it's paid dividends over and over since we've moved here.
2 years after coming to Marquette, you were appointed interim provost, and then a year later, the permanent provost and executive vice president. That was in 2019. The discernment process that led you to accept that full-time appointment.
Yeah, that was an easy one. For those who at the time, President Mike Lovell was here. He was the person I followed here. Great person, visionary leader. He was one of the reasons why I also decided to come to Marquette, because I knew it's someone I could come to work for. And when he called me and said, "Hey, I want to have a conversation with you," and then he said, "I'd like you to consider serving as the interim provost," I said, "Yes." And then he's like, "You should probably talk to your wife." And I'm like, "You're right." I take back my yes. And then I talked to my wife that night, and then I called the next morning and said, "Yes." It's when you get to work with someone who you respect and admire and who is a friend, and grew to be even a closer friend with me. That was easy thing to do.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned that was the easy decision. You were eventually appointed president after holding as interim president and acting provost. Can you talk with us about that decision-making process?
Yeah, that decision-making process, and that was an important one. Obviously, I think the president of any university or any organization plays a key part. And what I had to discern was, and I did this in consultation with my wife, but identify whether or not there was something that I could provide to the university that would be a value or a benefit. And I go back and I reflect back on my life as a first generation college student who was transformed because of education. But, when I went into that process, I said, what I have to offer is a student focused, a student centered university where we ask the question, will this improve the student experience? And when I went through the process, because as you might imagine, there are many people who would want to be president of Marquette University, but I had a very narrow platform. It would be, I will get up every day and I will ask, are we doing enough for our students? And if not, what will we do to change that? And so that discernment process only happened insofar as I said, here's what I have to offer. And then there was a committee and a board who had to determine whether or not that what I had to offer was sufficient for what they needed to take Marquette into this next phase of existence. And so what I like about it is we have a nice, great strategic plan. It focuses on the things that I'm interested in. The pillars are around thriving students, a healthy campus, and caring for the world. So if you cannot get excited by that strategic plan, then you can't get excited in life.
For individuals who may be in the position of considering comparable appointments, what would you offer to them as advice?
First and foremost, ensure you're doing the job for the right reason. There are some who want the title or the salary or whatever it has. You have to say, my intentions are because it's a good fit, right? Make sure it's a good fit between you and the organization, and do not do it if you simply want a title, because there are titles in many other institutions. So align with the mission of that organization. And if your alignment and their alignment is together on the mission, great, go ahead and do it. But if not, if you don't do it for the right reasons, your heart won't be in it, your mind won't be in it, and it will become apparent if you do it for the wrong reasons.
As you made this progression then, from serving as dean to serving as provost to now serving as president, In what ways, if any, did you find that it was necessary to change, alter, enhance your communication with the people you were called to serve and called to lead?
As president, you're called to inspire others, and you're called to be the storyteller of the university. And so I think one way is it requires me to be substantially more energetic. And, as provost, it's like, here are the things that we need to accomplish. And you still need to inspire the faculty that you have a good direction. But I would say is as the president, it's like people feed off of the energy that you bring into the room. And so, like I would say, is one of the things I've changed is my sleep habits. I sleep more now because I know that I need to be prepared, right, to be able to show up with my most energized self to all of the meetings. I think the other way is as president, you always have to be constantly thinking about how what's going around you in the world can be integrated to what you're doing and how you tell your story. So and it has to be simple. Like I talk about it as president, inspired about the momentum we have happening on our campus. And I could point to buildings, and I could talk about our campaign. I could talk about the incredible things that our students are doing. I could talk about the new students we're bringing in. Like, it's all about how are you telling your best story to be able to inspire others that Marquette is a great place and that they want to be part of it.
I'm looking for the provost out there who also, with the faculty, offers 5 booms too. Won't make it for one.
Yeah, you're not asked to do booms.
Thank you. In terms of that story, then, I want to ask you a little bit more about Marquette now.
Okay.
It's one of 27 Jesuit Catholic universities in the United
Yeah.
States, and one of 189 Jesuit Catholic universities worldwide. As president, would you describe the ways in which the Jesuit charisms animate the Marquette community?
Yeah. The Jesuit charisms around, yeah. It's all for the greater glory of God and serving other people. I would say it is at the centerpiece of, I would say it's our competitive advantage. It's who we are and what we do. And so we want to focus on students who care about deepening their faith, care about commitment to helping other people. And when we center our university around those ideals, and then we find the students who are seeking that same experience, it's a perfect match, and then magic happens. If we were to not do it, right? If we just go and get whatever students want to come here, then when they get here, they're going to find is we are not the experience that they wanted. And so we try to be very clear with our students. Do not come here unless you're looking for this transformational experience. And I would say is there are different universities for different students. Some students want that big, 80,000 student experience where you've got a large student like Arizona State that you talked about early on. And that's great. I think it's perfect for some people. Others want a small 3, 4, 5, 700 student experience. That's good for them. I would say is Marquette's midsize. It's Catholic Jesuit. It's about creating men and women for and with others. It's about inspiring our students to be the difference. And I think our ability to match our charism or our story with our students has been really successful. So we were recognized this last year as being #1 in the country. #1. No university is more regarded highly than this in our students' commitment to community service. And that's because we were able to say, this is what we do. And if you want that, come here. I think that's why we get there, because it's not as we are building those students. We are saying is this is what we do. Come here. And then we open up the opportunities that allow them to thrive in that space. And then for those students who are on the edge, the fence, they're seeing everyone else do it. And they say, I want part of that too.
Yeah.
And then they join it. And so giving back to Milwaukee and helping other people who need a little bit of help, cleaning up communities, serving others, it's just magical. And I enjoy the opportunities I get to serve with our students.
Thank you. As Marquette's second lay president, then, in and someone who's been part of the community now approaching 9 years, 10 years. In what ways, if any, have you sought to appreciate those charisms and take
Yeah.
a look on yourself?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I engage in more service now. I go and serve with our students. I think about how we infuse that in everything that we do at Marquette's campus. I use that as a discussion point when we're recruiting new students. I try to be part of everything that they want to do in alignment with those charisms.
In what ways then, as the second lay president again, prior to that, Marquette had a long history of Jesuit presidents. In what way is your service as a lay president comparable to your predecessors who were members of the order? And in what ways is it perhaps different?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think I'll start with the differences. As a Jesuit, they've lived their whole life. Well, a majority of, I guess, their adult life with the church, probably longer than that. And so, as a lay president, right, you have different sorts of commitments. You have a family, I have a wife, I've got children, and so it's like, how are you balancing things in relationship to that? In some ways, I think as a lay, you also are probably thinking you start from behind, so you need to work a little bit harder to prove yourself in that regard. But at the end of the day, it's about what's in you and what do you want to do. So you have a finite number of hours to be able to do everything. I think at the high level, are you setting the conditions that demonstrate you have a commitment to this personally and you have a commitment to it as a leader? And when you align both of those things, it allows success to happen.
Thank you. For other laypersons then who may be considering an appointment as a president at a church-related college and university with a long history of clerical leadership, what advice would you offer them?
I think as you get there, you have to understand and accept what you don't know. So when I was provost and a leader, right, a university leader, when I would go to have lunch with our Jesuits once a month in their residence. And I asked the question, I said, okay, so I'm not a Jesuit. I'm a lay person who's given a leadership role. Tell me what I need to do to be successful, right? Give me the best advice. And there was about 8 Jesuits at this particular table. And I went around and all of the 8 Jesuits told me, pray every day. And so what I would say is like become part of the community. And this has probably now been 7 years ago or so. I had this lunch and I pray every day. I make a commitment to just get up and pray every morning and I pray in all of my opening of all of my leadership meetings. I pray when I meet with students. In fact, just a couple of weeks ago, there was a student who walked out of the chapel and he's like, I'm not even Catholic. I'm Jewish, but will you pray with me? I'm about to go into this exam. And I'm like, absolutely. And we went off to the side and we prayed together that he would be successful in his final exam that he was taking. And then he wrote me back and said, it was great. I did well. Now, he didn't give me his grade yet, but the fact that he felt good coming out of it, that's a great thing. So I would just say it's like being intentional about figuring out how to plug in.
Thank you. As our time begins to become short now, I want to ask you some questions about the academic vocation. So drawing back from your experience as a full-time faculty member all the way through now to your experience as a president, how would you define the characteristics and or qualities of the academic vocation for you as you've sought to exhibit them, but also, now for educators who come to Marquette to serve?
I think, first of all, like you fit academically as you think about being a teacher. I think the larger one is, for me, it's men and women formed with others here. So that's the centerpiece of everything that I do and I think about, and I hope to be able to persuade people. When I was dean and I was hiring faculty, I would say is every day I need you to get up and ask the question, what will I do today to develop men and women formed with others? Because that's how we make the world better. And I'm no longer, hiring faculty. I'm hiring other leaders. In fact, I'll be hiring a provost in the coming weeks. We're finalizing that. But it's about, again, going back to and saying, well, what will you do to be able to create deans and vice presidents that will focus on men and women for and with others, and understanding that we're called to serve God, and understanding that we're called to be a difference, right, in the lives of others. So I think it's just being vigilant, and about that, hire for us, it's hiring the right people, getting to know people, and saying, if you're just looking for a job, this isn't just a job, it's a way of engaging the world.
In terms of forming those people that can, for this end of service for and with others, those new faculty members that you hire, are there any practices that are more significant than others in their formation?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think part of this is we have a program where new faculty who are hired might not have a Jesuit background. We can put them through a program so they can better understand where the Jesuits came from, what they stand for, and what it looks like when you are successful. So historically, they need to understand that. Now we start that even in the interview process to understand, so that they understand we are different here. And then when they get here, the Jesuits talk about specific educational practices. So our Center for Teaching and Learning helps to provide services to our faculty. We do it at new faculty orientation, but even beyond that, to say, here are the ways in which you will engage with our students from a, Ignatian perspective, from a kind of a Jesuit lens. So, it doesn't happen accidentally. I mean, if you think about it, is very few students go to Jesuit high schools, very few students go, and many, but in the scheme of all the different universities, few go to Catholic Jesuit universities. And, it's possible you hire someone who has come only from large public state institutions. And I think about that was my background, raised Catholic, but never went to a Jesuit high school or a Catholic Jesuit university. I think it's about getting people the resources that they need and hiring those people who want to do the work. And then you can make a difference.
When seeking to exercise such an understanding of the academic vocation there on campus at Marquette, and with all the Jesuit tradition and philosophy and approach of education, are there any virtues that you believe are more important to cultivate or most important to cultivate?
Yeah, I think most important is this understanding that there's a world greater than us, right? I think when we cultivate something that suggests that we individually have the answer, we individually are the solution, we individually can go out and do things. It's about understanding that there's something greater than all of us. First and foremost, we do it collectively. We do it in community. We do it understanding that we may think that we know what we want, and God will tell us in God's own way that we don't always understand it. And so I think it's about, allowing ourselves to give in when we feel sufficiently committed to doing that, but also as understanding as we need to do that in community.
Thank you. When seeking to exercise such an understanding of the academic vocation, are there any vices that you believe are more important that we need to guard against?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to people who lack humility. I think people who want to go solo in the world. I think that people who believe in that, like, the highest priority is physical wealth, objects. I think, engaging in climbing the ladder because we want that nicer house and the nicer car and the nicer title and, those nicer vacations that I think those are all the things that get in our way from preventing us to become our, absolutely best that we can be. And I think when we are pray together, we worship together, we read the scriptures together, the messages become very clear. I think about talking about, love others like I love you. The messages are simple about, about loving, about acceptance. It's about being the right kind of person, helping others. So I think those people who move away from the word are those that we just have to, figure out how do we get them on track. And it's obviously it's got to be something that they want, right? I get as much as I want someone maybe to have what many of our other students have, they cannot have that unless they have personally accepted that there is something out there that is bigger than them. And I think it's just providing the scaffolding for people to get to that place, those who want to truly get there.
Thank you. For our final sort of set of questions now, I want to ask a little bit more about the church and the relationship with the church you related university shares with the church. This sense of understanding of the academic vocation that we've discussed, in what ways is it's felt reflective of the health of the relationship that the university shared with the church?
They're intertwined for us. It's interesting. So I've had the chance to meet Archbishop Grob and invited him to campus, and he and I spent half a day together where we had lunch. I took him around campus. We talked about our goals. It was a phenomenal experience. I went to his installation. He came to my inauguration. In fact, he was there for Mass and was a part of that experience. And so I think it's important to constantly be connected. But I agree, I think how healthy the church is helps us to be able to attract students to Marquette, and how helpful we are helps to be able to keep students growing in their faith, which makes them more aligned with the church. I would say it's just a phenomenal experience when our students are worshiping and praying on campus together. You can see it, and they will talk about it as that for some of them, right? It's the deepening of their faith, and that makes a college experience all worth it for them. Obviously, the degree so they can go out and find that right vocation when they leave Marquette. But any university can graduate people. What I would say is we're successful when we graduate people who can go on and live a fulfilled life.
Thank you very much. Our guest has been Kimo Ah Yun, president of Marquette University. Thank you for taking the time to share your insights and your wisdom with us.
Thank you. I enjoyed our time together and look forward to having you on our campus sometime again.
Thank you for joining us for Saturdays at 7. Christian Scholars Review's conversation series with thought leaders about the academic vocation and the relationship that vocation shares with the church. We invite you to join us again next week for Saturdays at 7.